On this vote, the yeas are 229, the nays are 198, present is 1. Article 2 is adopted.
And that was the moment House Speaker Nancy Pelosi held a vote on the second article of impeachment, obstruction of Congress, sealing President Trump's fate of impeachment. The president impeached on a mostly party line vote last night. Trump is the third commander-in-chief in U.S. history to be charged with committing high crimes and misdemeanors, behind President Bill Clinton in 1998 and Andrew Johnson in 1868. Joining me right now to put all of this into perspective is the author of the new book, Inside Trump's White House, presidential historian Doug Wead. And Doug, it's great to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Maria.
It's expected that the Senate is not going to remove the president from office. Let's just say that right off the bat. If they do receive the articles of impeachment from Speaker Pelosi, who is holding them now, she says she's going to hold them until she has a better idea of what the Senate trial will look like. What's your reaction to what's taken place? And walk us through history to see what other impeachments have looked like, the other two.
Well, the impeachments are especially brutal for the families. Andrew Johnson had a son and daughter that worked with him in the White House when he was impeached. His son took his own life after they left the White House. His daughter marched up to Capitol Hill and said, "I don't care what you think of my father, we need appropriations. This is the people's house." She couldn't get money. She had cows, dairy cows on the South Lawn to get milk for the White House to try to shame Congress. So they can be very bitter, they can be very tough. But this one, this time, I think the president is inoculated by Russian collusion. That is so absurd, Russian collusion,
right,
that historians are going to look back and say, what? Come on, come on. And the impeachment is totally partisan.
Yeah,
That's
it
different.
Sure is. And by the way, I just want to point out that yesterday when Michael Horowitz testified, you say Russian collusion, he says the FBI's abusive investigation of officials connected to Donald Trump's campaign. He said, "I did not say no political bias in the FBI investigation." That one line was what the media ran with. In fact, he said that is not what he said in terms of the investigation.
Interesting. Jared Kushner, when I interviewed him for this book, he said the election in 2016 was not about the left and the right. It was between insiders and outsiders. And they knew from the beginning they'd be coming for them. The president met with his family at Mar-a-Lago, then later in Bedminster, and then finally at the Trump Tower, tried to warn them that a war is coming, that there are a lot of big monopolies are not going to like the fact that he's going to deregulate and allow the middle class into the economic game. So, but here he is. He's got the gold standard, peace and prosperity. The first president in 40 years not to have started a war on his watch so far, and the greatest economy, 7 million unfilled jobs. That's the population of Indiana.
Yeah.
Everything Hubert Humphrey and LBJ ever dreamed about for the poorest of the poor in this country have come true.
During the Clinton impeachment, Republicans held the majority in the Senate during President Bill Clinton's impeachment trial. He was still acquitted, even though the Republicans held the majority. Do you see parallels there?
Yeah, it's very, this is, the partisanship of this is so striking. For example, Nixon, the impeachment hearings, and when finally he left office and resigned, it was Republicans. It was Scott of Pennsylvania, the leader in the Senate, Republican leader, House Leader Rhodes. It was the former nominee for the Republican Party, Barry Goldwater. Those three came to the White House, said you got to go. There's nothing like that today. It's totally a partisan battle.
It's interesting to look back and see what has taken place. I mean, when you look at President Richard Nixon, famously resigned from office before impeachment proceedings. Take us back to that moment in history.
Yeah, well, that's just what I was describing, was how the Republican leadership themselves were the ones that triggered his resignation. And that's what you're missing today. You don't have it. This is total partisanship, and history's going to see it that way.
Yeah, this is what you said earlier. It's totally partisan.
Has that ever happened before? Where
Never
one of
had
his
it.
impeachments was a total, even under Clinton, you had Democrats, I believe, that
Yes,
voted.
it was, they've always been bipartisan. Yeah, that's
an approach.
it's
Wow.
pretty remarkable.
All right, Doug, great to have you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Maria.
Doug Wead, check out his new book. Meanwhile, quick